Summer Scrap Series Part 2. Hi everyone. Today we are going to discuss the remainder of these borders. For those of you who have never been here before, hi, I'm Dawn. Welcome to my quilt projects. So you'll have to go back and watch the previous video. I'll go ahead and pin that below so that you can get to that video if you're curious on how to make these borders. Now, the math on this did not math right. Yes, Mama Kitty, you want to say hi? This is Firecracker. Hi! She just had kittens, and they're about ready to be given away, so... Yep, Firecracker's a good girl. Okay. Shh. So the math did not math right. Whenever I originally designed this in EQ8, I designed this portion of the block to be this dimension. And I should not have done that. So I had to figure out an alternative on how to end my rows. So, as you see here, I had to come and let me angle this up. I'm so close. I only lack basically the 4 cornerstones, the 4 corners, and sewing my rows on. So I'm really almost there. Whenever you do put this quilt together, you want to find the center of your quilt, which 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So here is my center. Notice these are centered. This portion of my block is centered between these two, and that is how it needs to be. Now, wouldn't it be neat if I would have done something else? Incidentally, I was worried about all of these pieces not lining up, and in actuality, they line up really good. I have a couple that are just off just a bit, and then I have one. I may remove this one altogether because this one does stick out pretty bad whenever you step back from it. But these all really were very close and not worth doing extra trimming and cutting to make it work. So wouldn't it have been neat if I would have done it like this? Wouldn't it have been neat if I would have centered these over these? It would have added something unusual. I could have put flying geese there. I still could grow this and do that. Hang on a second. Wouldn't it have been neat to do this where you join the chains in the quilt within the chain link of the border? That would have been awesome. But that required a bunch of math, and I didn't want to complicate my summer. Did not want to complicate my scraps. So I went with what's easy. And for those of you who did not see my last video, you can also double the fun on this if you sew the 2 halves together of the borders. Let me show you that. Alright, would that not be a neat border? It would be an awesome quilt to put those just in rows or on the diagonal. This would be pretty amazing. So I opted only to make the 28 blocks, and I think I did make extra just in case I had a fudge factor, and I'm glad I did that. I also went around these with a zigzag, and I'll show you that here. So I encapsulated all of my raw edges, so I've put all this work into this. That little amount of effort did not take very much time. I timed myself. I had my machine set on the fastest speed, and it took about 2.5 minutes to achieve the zigzag all the way around. It was a massive thread dump I do not like using decorative stitches, blanket stitches, or zigzags because it does use and require lots of thread. But for this purpose, I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I took the time to do it. Right, I have my 2.5-inch bucket. I have used lots of color out of this in the quilt. So I'm going to pick out some neutrals where I don't have to get out any scraps and I don't have to cut anything down. And I know that these pieces are probably not used anywhere else in the quilt. Oh, how fun. Random stuff. Now, unfortunately, because I've already stitched the quilt top together, I'm going to have to stitch this and lay this in where I make a partial seam, then sew it all the way, and then make the rest of the seam. For those of you sewing from home, you could have already have done this because you probably work smarter, not harder. Okay, so here I have a block that's misaligned. Now, I have two options. I can rip this out, and notice on this end it is lined up. So the line, so I have something off on this side. I have two options. I can rip this block out and put in another block, or I can leave this in, and there's a little secret. So did you know that when you look at a quilt, let's say you're at a quilt show, your eyes automatically, because you read from left to right, your eyes automatically look from the center to the right. You don't pay any attention to the left. So I'm going to make this my left side. That will prevent me from having to unstitch this. And it's still showing generations from now how imperfect modern quilting was in 2025. I'm gonna call this the Amish effect, where you leave in a mistake. Okay, how I'm doing this, I know that the seam of my border is centered over these squares, so to keep everything true, I'm folding this in half, making a crease, and then I know that that's where my seam goes. And I am pinning. And here I am at the very end, and my math was right. Okay, I am going to go ahead and go with my original plan of making half square triangles in the corners. I am not going to go scrappy with this. And because I'm such a happy camper with how this has turned out, I'm using camping fabric. Now, my method of making half square triangles is using the easy angle ruler. However, again, you can get to the same destination, different technique. You can sew two squares together and then cut them in half. But the size you need is 5.5-inch half square triangle, and that is what it will finish in the quilt is 5 inches. And yes, I need a new rotary blade. I'm going to press to the dark side. I really don't think it matters which way you press this. And I selected these fabrics because this has so much color in it, and it picks up the color that's actually in the whole quilt. I may bind it with that because it is perfect fabric for it, and it is just a leftover piece of 108 of one of my other quilts I've done. Okay, now I'm going to play with the layout a little bit. I want to determine which way I want this. So do I turn them in or do I turn them out? Let's see. Let me look at it from a distance. It looks like the best way to put this is to turn them in. That was originally how I had it. The bars on the blocks here, it kind of dead ends the chain. I suppose I could get a piece of Misty Fuse and a little scrap and continue the chain. Summer Scrap Series Part 2, Take 2. I have stared at this for a solid day, and I think I'm going to go ahead and fill in this spot and this spot on all four corners with a raw edge applique piece to make it connect. I'm going to go ahead and do that detail, and I'm going to show you how. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is take a measurement. So it's 1 5/8 inch wide. So I'm going to cut a 1 5/8 inch wide strip. And then I've already got my stuff fused on this. And it's just going to be 1 1/4 inches. So I will affix that there with my iron and then come back in and raw edge zigzag over my raw edges. I didn't even have to take this off my design wall to install the parts I needed to iron on. I took my hot iron and just ironed it right at the spot it was on the design wall. And then there are pieces that are dragging the floor. I just slid my mat underneath and ironed it on and didn't have to take it off the design wall. Okay, I thought this was going to be easy this morning. I had 2 half-square triangles put up on my design wall. The other 2 were laying on my table, and now they're not there. I had to go back and watch my own video on what I did with them.